Joseph, you're welcome. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Good to have you again.
Hi, Mazino. Good to have you. Thank you very much.
Now, President Tinubu's administration says fuel subsidy funds are being redirected towards infrastructure, healthcare, and also education. What are your thoughts on the trade-offs involved in this decision, particularly considering the immediate hardship faced by Nigerians?
Well, thanks for that question, Mazino. I really appreciate it. It is absolutely clear. It is absolutely clear that the president may be thinking quite theoretically about his plans, and he has the right to think so, quite frankly, because he has his vision, and there are indicators that he's looking at that gives him a level of assurance that his plans are happening. However, there's another perspective of impacts and effects on people, aka outcomes, and he needs to find a way to get to middle ground. And in a scenario where it's increasingly difficult for people to share their thoughts and opinion, he may never get the benefits of knowing what people really think and how his policies are affecting people. I want to be a bit more specific. Ideally, when you redistribute windfall of currency devaluation, you imagine that the leaders at the subnational and even micro levels share passion that you do and are deploying those resources to ensure that they are solving problems as against spending money. So the real concern here is he listening to people? Is he getting effective feedback? And from his perspective, he probably thinks a lot is happening. But when you listen to people across the country, different demography, different disciplines, it's not as he thinks. Thank you.
Okay, so Nigerians are facing significant challenges across various sectors. These include security, education, and also healthcare. So given the president's emphasis on infrastructure and also healthcare and education, how do you think these sectors can be further strengthened to address issues like insecurity and inadequate healthcare and also poor education as well? You can remember JAM and WAEC.
Yes, I do. Mazino, there is something that is still being researched in public policy sphere. It is the concept of good faith lack of capacity. The reality is, it's not enough that you're passionate about something and then you are in office and it becomes then difficult for you to effect change. You may be passionate, you may have the zeal, but you do not fully understand the breadth, depth, and the complexities around the issues you are trying to resolve. And when you find people in offices, they really sound passionate, but we are not seeing steps that are taken that lead to solutions. And a lot can be done, quite frankly. But one of the things that the president needs is people who can competently communicate the milestones being achieved on the way to solving problems. I imagine, and I do have great sympathy for him, because when you find or you see spokespersons on TV, they are too political to be fact-based to talk about milestones and how we can progress. So, for instance, in the health sector, the president has a minister that is taking steps at having integrated approach to improving healthcare in Nigeria. You know, they are taking steps to ensure, for instance, that we do not have silos of interventions, that interventions are integrated and there is collaboration in trying to solve a long-term problem. And unfortunately, that is not expertly communicated by the people who speak on behalf of the president. When you look at infrastructure, again, theoretically, a lot of money has been deployed into infrastructure projects across the country. But a particular infrastructure project is making every progress that the government may be making seem inadequate, and that's the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway. That project, although it's supposed to be impactful and fundamentally changes the landscape of Nigeria when you look at it from a bird's eye view, but because of the controversy that came with it, you know, every other infrastructure project is seen from that perspective, and there's a lot of repair that needs to go into that. And when you now talk about insecurity and education, it is incredibly embarrassing. For instance, today's government, that even when they are talking strategy and policy up, when it comes to implementation and impact, the government is falling way below even its own expectations. Because when you look at the scandals at JAMB and the fact that innovation and creativity is not a bug within our education, it is a feature of it. You can begin to see the enormity of the problem. And I use one instance to buttress this point. The federal government released 50 billion naira to the academic and non-academic community of our educational institutions. And you can see already how that singular disbursement has created so much animosity within that system. And it is important that the systems that we are looking at to lead the political class to the solutions we hope to get, they themselves are innovative and they see themselves as the light. And this complexity are the things that promote better communication, expert communication, great understanding of the issues, the complexities that are being resolved that go to the solution need to be carefully communicated. At the moment, I don't think the president has the team that help unpack those complexities and the progress that's being made.
Aniekan, the president says these economic reforms are meant to lift millions out of poverty, but right now it feels like the opposition is actually, or rather the opposite is actually happening. Definition on exactly who poor is. So who's actually benefiting from these reforms and what needs to change so that they work for the average Nigerian?
Oh, we know absolutely who the poor beneficiaries of the president's interventions are. We know, let's not kid ourselves. We know that every federal lawmaker has, almost significant increases in their constituency budgets. We now know that, if you go to the Corporate Affairs Commission, businesses are being registered to execute a lot of the projects that these humongous sums are targeted at. But there's a mighty difference between spending money and solving problems. And this is something that we have to talk about a bit more. We see, and earlier, you had someone that came to talk about budget planning. We see that the government is spending money, but we do not see that there are solutions. And in talking about solutions, we're talking about impact, we're talking about how lives are changed. And unfortunately, the multi-dimensional poverty that most Nigerians feel has not changed. And that is something that we need to pay attention to. So that because you are spending money is not synonymous to solving problems. So yes, politicians are getting richer, contractors may be getting richer, and the people within that, political economy sphere are definitely benefiting from the windfall that we're seeing. Sadly, it doesn't translate into better healthcare, better markets, better, even where you have improving infrastructure. The infrastructure in itself is not where the people benefit, but it does, in a way, improve the overall existence. And that is what I think, from our perspective as enthusiasts, from the side of the media and civil society, we need to make it clear to the government that although you're spending money, it does not translate into problem solving.
So how much faith do you have in policy implementation? Do you think the average Nigerian also has such faith? What are your views on how the government can improve the implementations of these of its economic reforms?
Implementation, I think, is the third leg of a tripod approach to policy. So there's the design side, where incredible research and reliable data is the basis for defining what the problem is. And then in preferring solution, there is a broad stakeholder engagement that with the advent of technology and all sorts of other advantages, these types of engagements can happen so that a number of quick suggestions can come up in terms of solutions. And then the idea of people with the capacity and ethical strength to implement. And it is at that, when we have the first two, then we have the third leg that talks about the people who have the capacity and the ethical strength to implement. That is when you begin to see people unpack projects into milestones, so that when people always have hope. Hope is a critical thing. And this government has tagged itself the government of renewed hope. But you are not showing people the steps you are taking to that El Dorado. And that is something that this government needs to do. Implementation is only a third, of the other two things And sadly, it doesn't appear that we do know enough about the problems we're trying to solve. We understand how we want to do it, and we have the right people to do it.
Aniekan Joseph, thank you very much for giving us your opinion on the matter here this afternoon. Thank you.